Hey there, how's it going, everyone? This is John, the host of the Beskar Bucket podcast. Today I am here with Ken from the Forces Behind Star Wars, also known as my fellow crew member of the Inflatable Falcon podcast. And we are bringing you a special episode here today because we don't have Ken, or excuse me, we don't have Mike with us.
Yeah,
So how you doing, Ken?
I'm doing really well, thanks, and it's real exciting for me to be on this show with you. And it's going to sound like a silly question, but does the live part automatically record it for later? Are you
Yes, it
able to?
does.
Oh, that's awesome! I gotta become much more familiar with this restream stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah,
And
it
not only
really.
are we co-pilots on the Inflatable Falcon, we're also co-crew on the Han Solo Chronicles with Matt. So that's another fantastic thing that we share.
Right, and not only that, but we're also, thanks to Anthony, we're a part of this new Unifying Fandom Network that encompasses, I think, what, 4 or 5 different podcasts now. That's basically just like positive Star Wars fans talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
right now it's the forces behind Star Wars. Mike is working on talking with Colin to include Karita Cast. We've got the Inflatable Falcon. We've got the Beskar Bucket. This particular show. I know Mike was thinking about talking with Zoe and Lizzie to see if the Star Wars Geek Girls wanted to get involved with the Unifying podcast, and even possibly talking with Sal and the Rogue Rebels. And I know I've talked about this with you and Mike on in our other show. In the not too distant future, there will be a new solo show to add to that list. So, in addition to the forces behind Star Wars, I'm thinking about branching out and doing a solo show called the Rambling Star Wars Fan. So we'll have another podcast to put into that network of all of this creativity, positivity, and exploration of that galaxy that George and so many other people were involved in bringing to us.
Right, and I know you discussed this with everyone on the Forces Behind Star Wars, but for those who aren't familiar, can you explain kind of like what the thought process that Anthony had behind starting this up?
Well, one of the big things was this idea of that each of our shows by themselves attracts a certain kind of listener, a certain kind of Star Wars fan, if you will. And while they have some differences, many of the similarities are that the folks who tend to listen to us are interested in the behind the scenes aspects of Star Wars. They're interested in the creative aspects of it. So, not just the characters that we see on screen, but the inspirations and ideas for the characters, and this increasing respect and admiration for the that galaxy far, far away, and not even just from an entertainment standpoint, but from oftentimes a philosophical standpoint, or um, even I think I mentioned a creative aspect of it. So George, when he was creating the ideas for these movies back in the early 70s, he took inspiration from movies he liked, he took inspiration from stories he read, and he talked with other people who then went out and built stuff, who went out and drew stuff, who went out and created costumes that showed up on the screens. And then people like you and I and Mike and Matt and Anthony and Dexter, we have created stuff from that inspiration. And so there's this desire to get more of those folks connected to each other, to give our listeners the chance to find out that there's another similar podcast with different hosts, who also have that appreciation, who also have that creative side of it, who also really enjoy talking about all of this stuff. So that's kind of I apologize. It's a long answer to that one short question, but that's kind of where Anthony was coming from when he pitched that idea to Mike and I.
Right, and it's nice that we've got this connective tissue between, I don't mean to pat us on the back by any means necessary, but like you've got me, you, and Mike, where we each have our own shows that we do, and then we also have the Inflatable Falcon. So it's a nice bridge to where you've got the Forces Behind Star Wars, Karita Cast, and the Beskar Bucket. That if someone likes our Wednesday night show that we usually do, they can go out and they can listen to, they can get Anthony or Dexter or Colin's perspective on other things, and then of course anyone that I have on here. So it's nice that we've got that nucleus of the Inflatable Falcon to then branch out to the rest of everyone's shows.
Yeah, because that cargo hold on that Inflatable Falcon has enough room for to carry a whole lot of stuff. I mean, it carried 400 Rebels from Crate. So there's still room for more shows, more hosts, more bouncing around, if you will, in this space. And one of the great things I enjoy thinking about related to all of these different shows is it shows the breadth and depth of the appreciation. It shows the breadth and depth of the possible conversations. I mean, you and I and Mike have spent hours, plural, talking. We start talking about topic A related to Star Wars. We drift off into something absolutely positively random, like maybe one of our long lost relatives or health insurance, and then we manage to work our way back to the galaxy and talk about Chewbacca's weapons or the screws on a TK costume that makes this version of it different from that version of it.
Well, I think that's the nice thing about Star Wars is that there's so much that we can afford to have those conversations that start at topic A, and then we branch into topic 3A, because it's like, oh yeah, that one thing in Star Wars reminded me of this real world event that happened, and then we use that, we take that path, and then we somehow always end up circling back right to Star Wars.
Yeah, and I know we've joked around about it with the three of us, and on our podcast, the Forces Behind Star Wars, we've definitely talked about it, and it's how Star Wars in a magical way does bring people together in many instances. And so that's also an extension of that idea that Anthony has, to bring more people together, to get more people talking, to get more people to find those things that they can enjoy about it. And sometimes the finding comes from listening to what other people enjoy, listening to somebody else's opinion, because you know what, I never really saw that thing that way, or I never considered this aspect of it before. And now that I've heard that, I can't unhear that. And it makes me think about this other portion that I may not have considered before. And it can be something as creative as a costume. So this costume was built on the idea of an ancient samurai, or it can be a utensil that showed up on screen for 3 seconds, and now you can get that thing at a you get a template for it, and you could 3D print it if you wanted to. So it's pretty interesting to see how all these stories can weave in and out and get folks talking and connecting. So
yeah, I mean, like you said, I think me, you, and Mike we have to have crossed into the days portion now of time that we've spent talking about ridiculous things. I mean, heck, look at Mike, going back to that, you can find these things from Star Wars in the real world. Like Pelimoto's flashlight Mike got at Harbor Freight. It's the exact same one.
Yeah. And so not only did he get it, let's talk about that for a second. Not only did he get it, he took a picture of it and sent it to us. And when we saw it, we knew what he was talking about. Like, it's that's the one. That's the flashlight. Star Wars brings people together, and after a while, there becomes this verbal language, this visual language, this curiosity and creativity that just connects us all in weird and wild ways.
Yeah, and I was listening to your most recent episode of The Forces Behind Star Wars, which, look, to be 100% honest, me listening to a podcast is very few and far between. I don't have the attention span for it, but I made it all the way through your Rogue One episode.
Oh, and, awesome! Thank you for that.
And there was something that really stuck out to me, because you were talking about how Mike and I would sit there and pause the screen and you know put a magnifying glass up to every nook and cranny. And I don't know why, I just found that so interesting because it's true. That is something that Mike and I do, and if you were to take the context out of that and just plug that into any other even fandom, really, people would look at you like you've got three heads.
Oh
But
goodness, yeah.
but Mike always talks about silos, and in the silo that we're in with costuming and the Star Wars community in general, that's just become normalized, and I just find that to be just hysterical.
Well, I mean, there are now entire Facebook groups and pages that are dedicated to the props or the parts for creating certain costumes, and in a weird way, it's created this different marketplace. I mean, so for instance, a lot of folks who have watched Star Wars know that one of the original lightsabers was built on the casing of a Graflex um, flash handle. So it's an old camera flash handle. I don't know the year and all that. I just know it's called a Graflex and it's a flash handle.
Mm-hmm.
So now those things have become a hot commodity. If folks find the actual thing, they'll sell them for a couple $100 a piece. Whereas before, they would be something that you found at a garage sale or a vintage shop, or maybe in an old person's attic, that would either be thrown away or sold for pennies. And now, now they're sold for hundreds of dollars because people know that particular model was used for this lightsaber in this one movie.
Well, I mean, if you even want to get so granular into that exact same prop, I want to say uh, it was probably in New Hope, the bubble strip that goes. I don't. Lightsabers are the one thing that escapes me from their whole terminology.
Okay.
But the control box on the
Yep.
side, the bubble strip on Luke's and Obi-Wan's lightsaber came from a Texas Instruments calculator. And even that, I mean, it's a 2 inch and a half piece of plastic that goes for well over $100 just to go with that darn near $1,000 flash rod.
Yeah, it's pretty wacky and wild to think about that. Because if you go back to when they were being made, I mean, the prop guys and girls, the carpenters and stuff, they were literally going and buying just piles of garbage, piles of scrap, piles of things, whether it's a military surplus store or a vintage shop or a prop shop or whatever, just buying as much random bits and bobs as they could, cobbling them together, and yep, this is going to be this weapon, and this is going to be that other person's weapon. And now, people will scour estate sales and garage sales hoping to find one of those things, or they'll go to eBay and pay a whole bunch of money for them. So, or on the other end of it, now with 3D printing, folks will buy one of those things. They'll use the 3D scanning capabilities that many folks have now, and they'll print them out. And still, they won't sell them for as much because it's not an authentic piece, but they'll still make part of a business out of it, which is really interesting to think through.
Yeah, and I mean, they still do that today. I mean, like we said, Mike and I are the kind of people who are going to overanalyze every single scene. They're in the Battle of Scarif from Rogue One. I think it was maybe 2 specific shots. There is a rebel who's carrying it's a heavier blaster that it's the upper and lower receiver from an AR-15. Nothing else, but they put a couple different greeblies on it to make it Star Wars, and there you go. That's a rebellion blaster. So it's nice to see that they're still keeping some of that tradition alive, even now into this modern era where they don't necessarily have to just get random bits and bobs to make props.
Yeah, because they could theoretically just sit at a computer and design all these things in some sort of 3D modeling software and resin print them, or regular 3D print them or whatever, and then mold them and make bunches and bunches of them. But they still go back to some of those techniques that were used way back when. I mean, even if we look at the Book of Boba Fett, and do you remember the episode with the large sand monster, the four-legged, two-armed monster that jumped out of the sand? They used, the same kind of motion that Ray Harryhausen used in his monster movies way back when. So even in 2019, when they made the Book of Boba Fett, they were still relying on some of those tried and true movie techniques that they were inspired by when they were kids, that they enjoyed watching when they were just watching movies and not thinking about actually making them.
Right. And I mean, to even go one step further, it in The Force Awakens, when Finn turns on the Dejarik table, they use stop motion animation to recreate the hollow chest scene.
And that was just moments long. It wasn't a really long scene at all.
Right. Yeah. And so what they ended up doing was, if my memory serves me correctly, it was they took from the very last time in A New Hope, when you see the Dejarik table on, they finished the last part of that game when he turned on the hollow chest table.
Oh, that's funny. And they use the I'm pretty sure they use the characters, the actual characters in the Dejarik table in Saw Gerrera's base on Jedha. So they didn't have the hologram version of it, but they had just the creatures on a table in a shot that you just passed through, and you just saw it kind of setting over there.
Yeah, I want to say that was right before John Williams' cameo in that movie.
Yeah,
or was he in Solo, or was he in Rogue One?
He was in Solo. No. He wasn't in that. He was actually in he was in Rise of Skywalker. John Williams. He played the barkeeper. His name in the movie was Maestro. I guess that's the if you rearrange the letters of his name, it was Maestro. It was for Rise of Skywalker.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting my cameos mixed up.
Yeah, he was in that bar scene where you had that ginormous looking teddy bear thing, and the guy with only a part of a head, and another creature had this ginormous set of teeth. So they were going to get C-3PO's head examined.
Yes.
By Babu Frick.
Yeah, on Kijimi. Okay.
Yep.
Now it's coming back to me.
Yep. So the scene I was talking about was in Rogue One with Saw Gerrera, and they were in the I don't think it was a Jedi temple, but it may have been, and you saw Wee Teeth and all of this collection of stuff, and I'm pretty sure set in that scene was a Dejarik table with the actual clay maquette kind of things of those creatures, of those chess pieces.
Right. Yeah, I know which scene you're talking about, and I can visualize it. I guess the same kind of effect or setting, I should say, is where I got my wires crossed. But I do remember seeing the Dejarik pieces, because that was right outside where they were holding Bodhi, Chirrut, Baze, and Cassian.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now I'm back on track. Now I'm back to being a real fan.
I was about to ask for your card. Gonna clip off one corner.
Yeah. Oof.
Once we have to cut off all four corners, you lose your membership to the Star Wars Geek Club.
Wow, close call.
Well, it was a wonderful save. I mean, you knew you were able to talk your way through it.
Hey, just like Han Solo, right?
Yep. Which we still haven't figured out who shot first, so we'll just leave it at that.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm sure there'll be another special episode soon, another special edition.
Right. I will say this, though. I know we talked about it last week on the Inflatable Falcon, but the special editions, there are some things that I don't like, but I like more than I dislike out of everything they've added over the special editions. I think there's maybe one thing that I dislike, and that is the McClunky line that they added for the Disney Plus
Ah,
version.
yeah. So that was like the special editions, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still, I still haven't I haven't heard the story of where that came from, and it's not like they announced it ahead of time. It just they opened up Disney Plus, it was on there, and like we literally tripped on McClunky.
Well, from what I've heard, and I could be wrong, was the last thing that George wanted to add. The same reason that he added Greedo shooting and all of the other special editions is he didn't want Han to seem like as much of a bad guy, and so having him say McClunky would give him that reaction time of like, all right, he's gonna shoot me.
Yeah.
So.
Which is really interesting to think about because, so if we go back to that first movie, I mean, Luke Skywalker's move in the Death Star was pretty dramatic. I mean, and I don't have numbers in front of me to verify what I'm about to say. However, I'll say it anyway. His destruction of the Death Star led to the killing of lots and lots of people. So for George to be concerned about killing off one Rhodian in a bar versus the thousands, if not potentially millions of people that were working on the Death Star at the time that Luke shot his shot. I mean, are those two things really in comparison? I mean, folks don't necessarily see Luke as the bad guy for having done that.
Right. And I mean, not to mention, like, Greedo was holding him at gunpoint, so kind of justified, but yeah, hey, they're George's movies. He can do with them as he pleases, which I think that should be the end all be all argument for any of the special edition, distaste out there.
Yes. And I love whispering this to people when they get all heated about anything related to Star Wars, and that's just lean in close and say, none of it's real, right? So, and it causes them to pause and look at me in a weird kind of way, and then I just carry on.
Yeah, it's what because I do the same thing where it just reminds me of the meme where it's they're holding the bottle, it's pills that are tough to swallow. That's the only thing that I can visually picture. It's just, hey, you understand this is a fictional universe we're arguing about, right?
Yeah.
So actually, I made a TikTok kind of related to that where because this was at the point where I was getting a lot of heat for going on and saying Rise of Skywalker, gasp, shock and awe. And I posted a picture of me wearing headphones reading the Last Jedi novelization in my Last Jedi t-shirt. And it was, people in my comments arguing over fictional characters that don't actually exist, as if it's life or death or something to that effect.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've really struggled to understand related to, and I'll use the word in quotations, fandom, where folks will get so heated about some of these things. Whether it's they're heated over a name, they're heated over perceived plot holes, or whatever. It's meant to be entertaining first and foremost. And if you're not entertained, then let's just stop there. Carry on, move on to something that you are entertained by, move on to something that you would rather enjoy. But whoo boy, I mean, don't take it out on the either the actors or actresses. Don't take it out on the director. Don't take it out on Disney. Just they made something you didn't like. Okay, next. I think you recently posted something about Star Wars being like a restaurant. I think you had shared something like that.
Yeah, that's actually that's a really good quote. Let me see if I can't get that pulled up real fast because I'd never understand why people get so upset. Here it is. Star Wars has and always will be a restaurant. We all love eating there. We don't like every dish on the menu, and that's okay. You're not supposed to. Order what you like, avoid what you don't, and don't worry about what other people are having. and don't be a dick to the staff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's my favorite line of the whole thing. Don't be a dick to the staff.
Well, and I mean, I don't think I've ever seen something so true, because it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't like it, don't watch it, or don't read it, or don't listen to it.
Yep.
And I mean, it's Star Wars is for everybody. It's not just for you, person number 3,462 that just happened to like Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I would love to think that the world revolves around me and what I like and what I do, I know it doesn't, especially not a fictional universe that I have no control over.
Yeah.
But
and if you really want to have that control, then invest the time and money and create your own world, like literally and figuratively. You know, I can't remember if it was after The Force Awakens or if it was after The Last Jedi that somebody had attempted to start a Kickstarter to raise money to redo the movie, which I thought was a very bold thing, because now you're saying that you have enough people and know-how to recreate this multi-million-dollar extravaganza, and you also have the skill set to do it better than whoever it was that created it. Whether we're talking about Brian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy and the whole crew, or J.J. Abrams and the whole crew, but this person was bold enough to think that they could do it and do it better.
Yeah, and I always go back to thinking that it's very surprising to me that me and you and the people that we associate with, we are in the very much so, maybe not the minority, but the silent minority of Star Wars fans, who we don't care what they put on the screen or put in print. We like it all. And it's not so far as, I'm going to die on that hill that I loved every single second that they've put on screen. But as a whole, I genuinely cannot say there's anything that has ever been put out, not just specific as the Lucas era or the Disney era. There is nothing that has ever been put on the screen there I'm like, I don't like it. I refuse to watch it. So, and I think it's very hard for me to believe that those are the people that we don't see more. But we always hear the people who it's always negative, or it's always, I don't like Jar Jar Binks or Rose Tico or I don't like anything that Disney has put out.
And so you'd kind of lumped us as the silent group. And what I'd really like to say, going back to one of your earlier comments or questions about the unifying force or the unified force, is I'd like us to become louder. And I don't just mean us, the 8 or 12 or whatever is now in our stable, but more folks, because they're there. I mean, whether you go to the Steel City convention or you make it out to one of these larger ones like Comic-Con or Celebration, there are folks that genuinely enjoy it. There are folks that get excited about it, and those folks, I think those folks would love listening to our show. I think those folks would add to the variety of comments and add to the variety of topics that we talk about, and I'd love to see and hear from more of them. I mean, I will admit, I've been to several celebrations, and oddly enough, there were lots of folks there that were negative Nancy's, that were, negative Nellies or Neils or however you want to describe them. I'm like, wait a minute, like, first of all, you paid money to be here. Like, you went out of your way to get a ticket or tickets to be here, and now you're gonna complain to me about this thing? Like, what? I think you're a little mixed up here.
Yeah, and it's not like it's cheap either.
No.
And it's like you spent a lot of money to be at a Star Wars convention where you are surrounded by this 24/7, at least for the next 4 days.
Yep. Well, I mean, we've been to Disney World a bunch of times, and we've overheard and witnessed folks. Oh, I can't believe there's so many people here. What did you think this through? I mean, you're talking about going to Walt Disney World, the one of the most popular theme parks on the planet, and you're surprised that there are people here. You're surprised that there are this many people here. I'm not sure if you really considered all the possibilities before you purchased those tickets and made your way in through the gates. And the same is true of Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's how cold is it under the rock you are living?
Yeah, or how dark.
Right.
Do you not get Wi-Fi reception there? Like something's missing.
Yeah, you definitely get your wires crossed there if you think that Disney or even Celebration is, if you thought you were going to be at one of a handful of people there.
Yep.
So
I think this past Celebration, if I have the numbers right, I thought it was like 65 or 70,000 people went through those doors over the course of the 4 days. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that is your average football stadium worth of people.
Yeah, which is why they do those things at such large venues, whether you're talking about the Anaheim Convention Center, the one that's in Chicago, or even the one in Orlando. I mean, they need the space for the folks. They need the space for those panels. Some of those panels are done in these ginormous auditoriums where you can fit a couple thousand people, on top of the fact that I often have breakout rooms where you can fit a couple thousand more to witness people talking about this galaxy far, far away. Either from the place of this is what has happened, or from that exciting place of this is what you can expect to see next. And they'll often do trailers, and they'll bring in the cast of the next shows that you didn't know were going to be the actors and actresses, and everybody wigs out. It is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to Celebration. I think it was either 2018 or 2019 when Kathleen Kennedy brought Ewan McGregor out for the first time and announced the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, I think that might have been Chicago. I think it might have been 2019.
Yeah, I mean, I want that feeling all the time where everyone is super excited, and it's a world of endless possibilities. I get disappointed when these shows come out, not because they're poor quality or that I was disappointed, but that other people have been severely disappointed and let down. And I wish everyone could share in that same excitement that I get, waking up at 3 a.m. to watch the new Star Wars show.
Well, what's interesting about that is, so you choose to set your alarm clock at a certain time to get up to see the show because you are genuinely excited about it. You witness it. You look for the parts you enjoy. You look for the parts that you connect with. You look for the parts, at least in our world, the costume creating world, you look for the parts that you might be able to make or want to make. And now we're at the place where we're looking for people we may know. I mean, in Kenobi, there was a couple podcasters who managed to get guest appearances. They got small on-screen parts, and so Kathleen Kennedy, I know you're listening, and if you're not listening, then I know it's Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. We're more than willing to be some of these background characters for you, but you choose to do that. And on the flip side, folks do choose the exact opposite of that. So I mean, even the very first day that the Kenobi show came out, so they released those 2 episodes for the world, and folks were already talking about how bad the series was. They were already talking about how it didn't advance a story. They were already talking about this was a show that nobody asked for. I'm like, I'm not sure if all of those things are wholly true or accurate, and you're still putting it out there as if it is fact and not just your impression or your interpretation or your opinion, but you're placing it out there for fact, which is sad, I think.
Yeah, and Zoe said it best on I think it was her most recent episode of the Star Wars Geek Girl podcast, where I think some people forget that this is a series. So when you have a bunch of negativity coming out about like, oh, this is a bad series, they have no direction of where they're going or anything of that nature. It's a series. It needs time to develop. So I think people need to get more into that mindset of like, hey, whoa, let's pump the hate brakes and
Yeah,
let's see how this unfolds.
yeah. Let's see
Because
all the parts and not just one part.
I mean, you could there was a visible switch in tone once of the audience reaction once episodes 5 and 6 came out of Kenobi, where it was, oh, we're getting to see more Hayden Christensen. We saw him, in all the flashback scenes. We see him, interacting with Obi-Wan and the third sister in between episodes 5 and 6. And it's one of those things where, it's like, oh, I wish the quality would have been this good all the way through. It's like, well, it was. They didn't give you what you wanted. So I think it's
And
one of the things where people need to slow down before they start rushing to judgments. And I had the same thing. I remember I talked about it on our show when the first 2 episodes came out, where I told you guys word for word, I have my reservations. There are a few things that I didn't care for, but I'm gonna hold my judgment until I see episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6. And
yeah,
my
see,
tone
that's
changed.
different. So to be willing to say I hold my judgment or I feel this way about it is different than saying this is a show that nobody wanted. Because that sounds like a statement of fact. That sounds like you're coming from a place of authority. Like you've surveyed the world and everybody has said that they don't want to see it. Or the comment of it doesn't advance the story. And which story? Because one of the, the challenging things to truly consider related to Star Wars, there are so many stories, plural. It's not just a story. You're not just following a singular character. Even in this show that we're talking about now, the Kenobi show, yes, there's a title character. However, you could make the claim that there's at least 6 other characters whose stories were embedded in that, and some of them were done in a way that we may not be done with them yet. They introduced new people that we hadn't met before. They brought in folks who we have met before that we're now wondering what else occurred with them. So whether you're talking about Kenobi or Anakin / Vader, so we know where they end, but we also know there's a gap between the end of the show and where they end. So there's the possibility for more stories with these people that we've been paying attention to for decades.
Yeah, I think the notion of nobody asked for this is just a logical fallacy, because there is no such thing as a show that nobody asked for. Because you have people, I mean, if you want to get so granular as look at it like us, I will sit here and ask, hey, if they want to put on 6 hours worth of the Cantina band playing, you bet your ass I'm going to wake up at 3 a.m. and watch it every Wednesday.
Yeah, and I'll wake up even earlier if you tell me that some of the other characters of the Cantina will be getting down and dancing to some of the music that's being played by Figure and Dan and the nodal modes, or
The modal notes.
modal nodes. Yeah, tell me there'll be some alien dancing, sure, or they'll just be random characters coming in and out of camera all the time. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's such an ignorant thing to say, of nobody asked for this, because there are plenty of people out there who want whatever they can get from this universe, because it means so much to us.
Yeah, and with that in mind, one of the things that I believe related to all of this stuff is I believe that at least today, the people who work on it because they want to. They work on it because they appreciate the stories. They work on it because they appreciate the opportunity to be creative. They work on it because they have the opportunity to build something, make something, share something, which may not be true of the first crew, because we've heard stories, where some of the crew in the English group, the first of A New Hope, are like, what is this thing? They didn't really understand it. They didn't, because at the time there was nothing to compare it to, and so they were just following this random weird bearded guy from California, and who had a giant space bear dog and a ninja wizard space guy and laser swords. So it didn't necessarily make sense to them. But now where we are, with as much content that has come out and as many stories have been created and as many characters that have been brought into the universe, the folks that are doing it now, whether you're talking about the sound people or the carpenters or the costumers, they're in it because they want to be in it and not because they have to be in it.
Right. And the you know, we're at such a point in time where Star Wars has become this dare I say galactic phenomenon, where you have people, and yes, I mean every single person, be that J.J. Abrams, Ryan Johnson, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, Deborah Chow, Robert Rodriguez, all of these wonderful directors and creators that are out there. They do it because they love Star Wars. They're not just there to collect a paycheck, contrary to what some fans believe. Ryan Johnson didn't set out, I'm going to make millions of dollars and destroy your childhood. He wrote and directed The Last Jedi because he was a fan of Star Wars, and you just didn't like his vision. Again, that might be a tough pill for you to swallow, but he did it because he enjoyed Star Wars and he appreciates what has come before his time.
Yeah, and we could even go one step further with that. Not only did he appreciate Star Wars and build something and create something that he thought other people would, he got approval to do that. So it wasn't as if he was making this in his backyard and posted it on his TikTok channel for his followers to watch. This went through all the rigmarole of getting, Kathleen Kennedy's blessing and Disney's blessing and all of that sort of stuff. So if the powers that be didn't want his movie to be made, it wouldn't have gotten made.
Right. Look no further than Colin Trevorrow with Episode 9, Duel of the Fates. They didn't want to put his vision on screen, so they parted ways and brought back J.J. Abrams.
Yep. Or you could even say the original Kenobi movie, because originally Kenobi was going to be a movie, and they changed that. Or all of the video games that have started and stopped and not been created, or Star Wars Detours. They had several episodes made and ready to be displayed, and they said, "Yeah, nope, we're not going to do it."
They had 24 episodes of that ready to go out, and it just at the 11th hour said, "Nope, we don't want this. We don't want this put out." Which I hope one day we get to see it.
Yeah, it's got to be somewhere. I can't imagine that they would just destroy all. I mean, there are millions of copies of the 1978 holiday special, so there's gotta be people who have seen it.
You're right.
So whether we're talking about was it Seth Green that was involved in that?
Yep.
Seth Green and others of the production team, that had the opportunity to see that.
Which I would just like to take a minute to think about the relationship that Seth Green had with George Lucas, because it's one of those things where he poked so much fun at Star Wars, not out of a place of malice, but as a place of appreciation. And he got the chance to sit down at Skywalker Ranch and film gags with George Lucas.
A bunch of look how much stuff showed up in Robot Chicken, for crying out loud.
Right. I mean, he got 3 specials worth of content because George Lucas appreciated the fun that was being poked at him and what he created.
And I think there were several of those little vignettes that George lended his voice to. Like he did his own voice of his own Robot Chicken character.
Mm-hmm.
The whole I thought they smelled bad on the outside. Just
yeah. And then the live action bit they did with the writer's room, where he actually threw a guy out. And Seth,
because he brought up Mara Jade.
Yeah, he's like, I'm George. I'm so sorry. Yeah, hey, don't you ever bring him around here again. Yeah. There is one point that I would like to make though. I was thinking about this on my way to work. while listening to the forces behind Star Wars. You can find it wherever podcasts are found. Um, and we say all these things where we're on one side of the aisle, and then the so-called toxic fans are on the other. And you always got to think back and remember to that other side, we are the toxic fans. We're the people who don't get it. So we say all this stuff, but at the end of the day, we all have an love and appreciation for Star Wars, and it would be nice if we could all just come together and agree that, hey, you may not like this, I do, but we're all part of the same fandom. We're all part of the same universe at the end of the day.
So I do agree with the idea that there is, you mentioned the idea of other sides of the aisle, and another way I think to examine it as we're looking at the same thing from different angles, and so I may see this piece and you may see that piece, and it's still just a piece of a greater whole. The one piece I will go a little bit differently than you is, from my perspective, a toxic fan is one who takes their opinions so strongly and so loudly to then use it as a weapon, not to help somebody understand their perspective, but they use their opinion, they use their words to hurt somebody, to harm somebody. And I think that, for me, that's where the toxic part comes from. I mean, we only have to go so far as to think about Jar Jar Binks, and folks went so far not just to say that they didn't like the character or they didn't like the animation that was used to create that character, or they didn't like the voice of that character. They went so far as to attack the individual who voiced it, to the point where that gentleman, Ahmed Best, considered jumping off a bridge and ending his life. So to me, that's where that term toxic really shows itself, when the quote unquote fans are saying things so loudly, so hurtfully, so harmfully as to cause insult or destruction to somebody else. Then that's not someone that I necessarily want to hang out with. Would I like to hear their opinions on something? Like, tell me why you view what you view, or tell me the angle from which you're viewing it. Yeah. However, if you're going to use your moment to hurt somebody, use your moment to discredit somebody or ridicule somebody, yeah, I don't want to share space. So you can stay on that side of the aisle, and I'll stay over here, and that's cool with me.
Yeah, in kind of going back to what you said, would I want to hear your opinion? There are some people where I lose the respect to hear their opinion with some of the things they say. To what you were saying is, people, criticized and were so hurtful towards Ahmed Best, where I don't really care what you have to say at that point. You've done and said enough to where it's, no, I'm good. You can keep your opinions to yourself in my eyes.
Yeah, and if you're gonna get that heated about this fantasy world and the people who worked to bring this fantasy world to life, imagine where they would go with something a little bit more real, a little bit more intense, a little bit more, I don't know, just a little bit more, rather than just this fairy tale space opera. Like, if you're that excited about this, oh boy, what are your thoughts on global warming? What are your thoughts on the price of gas? I mean, are you going to get that mad at the current Senate and the president or whatever? I mean, whew.
Yeah, and it's very disappointing to see things like that, or even like George Lucas. People hated the prequels so much that he felt that and I may be putting words in people's mouths, but I mean that he felt that he needed to sell Lucasfilm to Disney because he couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't take the criticism of, you're not going to please everyone. So,
Well, and with that in mind, not only did he understand that he wasn't going to be able to please everyone, he also sold to Disney because he didn't want the companies to go away, because there were so many people that worked at them. And so if that were to happen, all of those folks would have been jobless.
Right.
And so he chose to sell it to Disney, to the one company that he believed would put the time, effort, energy, and money into making sure that more stuff was created to give these folks the chance to maintain their jobs in this galaxy that had been developed for so many years. So it wasn't necessarily only about walking away with $4 billion in his pocket. It was also in a noble way. And this is just my interpretation of it, to make sure that this group of people that he's built, this team that he's helped put together, maintain their place of employment.
Yeah, and not only that, but obviously, thank the maker that Disney didn't end up shelving Lucasfilm, but oh wow, George Lucas got $4.9 billion. He gave most of that to charity. He didn't need almost $5 billion. He had enough money, and he understood that. Heck, the man lives in Chicago. I don't think money is a big issue to George Lucas.
Yeah, and it hasn't necessarily been a driving force for him either. Not from the perspective of personal gain. Has he benefited from it? Oh my goodness, yes. However, even when you go back to those first movies and the merchandising and so on, it wasn't like, okay, how can I get more nickels from these children? Let's see, I'll make some puzzles and some T-shirts and these 3 3/4 inch plastic space figures. No, his thinking was, we can do this to make another movie. We can do this to do this other thing. It wasn't only about lining his pockets with cash.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like he just fell into this. He put in the time and the effort to put this out there. It's not like he all right, kick the feet up and I'm a billionaire. He put his own health on the line to get the original Star Wars out on screen to where he couldn't direct 5 and 6 because of his health.
Yep.
So yeah, I will never fault him for for selling out, because I don't know. I'm getting on too much of a soapbox now.
Welcome to your TED Talk.
You're right. I respect the hell out of George Lucas for the grit and the grind that he put in to put 6 films, 6 saga films, plus the 2 Ewok movies, plus all of everything that was put out before 2012. And that, for the most part, was, with the exclusion of Star Wars: A New Hope, a lot of that was done on most of his dime.
Yeah. And going back to what I was talking about earlier, this idea of his ideas inspired other people. So whether we're talking about the comic books that came out during that time, the novels that came out during that time, the video games that came out during that time, even the toys that were made at that time, his ideas inspired all of those other makers, all of those other creative people. And you could even go so far as to say that his work inspired other movies. I mean, how many rip-off movies of Star Wars have you seen in your day? There's
quite a
lots of them. Or even just the technology that was used to create Star Wars was then used in other movies. I mean, he changed the face of filmmaking. He changed the face, not just the face, but the sound of film watching. And because of his desire to build, his desire to create, his desire to share, and to get other folks to do it. Because one of the things I find really amazingly fascinating is George didn't sew a costume. George didn't mold a prop. George didn't hammer a nail for any of the sets, and they were made. So he was able to take these ideas that were bouncing around in his brain, share them with other people who then created worlds upon worlds, created languages, created cultures, all from this idea that he wrote down on a legal notepad.
Yeah, and truthfully, I don't think Ralph McQuarrie gets enough credit as he should, because, like you said, George Lucas didn't make a prop. He didn't build a set. You know, a lot of that comes from Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art to you know, put George's thoughts onto paper and then on the screen.
Yes. And so it was Ralph and Colin Cantwell, some of those original concept writers or concept artists, who put pictures to George's words, and then George took those pictures and the words to share with, whether we're talking, you know, Alan Ladd or the other folks who were involved in distributing and all of that kind of stuff, approving for these movies to be made, was able to put those pieces together to say, okay, we're going to do this. And then to get the script writers and the actors and actresses. I mean, I think it was Harrison Ford at one point during A New Hope who said, George, you can write this shit, but you sure can't say it. You know, so he was able to get these actors and actresses to pretend to be in this galaxy for us to sit in a dark room and enjoy, plus to work with someone who I will never understand how this happens, but can take pencil to paper and draw these little characters that musicians then go and perform those notes to create the soundscape for these movies. John Williams is a magician. So when he's up there standing there conducting, I really think he's conducting witchcraft, and that's a magic wand in his hand, because the sounds that come out of those instruments, coupled with the visuals that we see, is nothing short of magic.
Right, and I think the one thing that I will always go back to, speaking of sound, is, you know, I went back and watched the original Tron the other night with a couple of buddies
for the 40th anniversary.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be chastised and crucified for saying this. I am not a fan of the original Tron movie at all. The story is there, but it does not translate, at least in my personal opinion. And, you know, that's that. But, you know, because that was in 1982, whereas Star Wars was 1977. There is a stark contrast between the two of them, and they're both seen as cultural phenomenons and these massive blockbusters, where Star Wars, in my opinion, again, it holds up much more. And the one thing that I can attribute that to, it doesn't have anything to do with the story or the visuals. It's sitting there for complete silence in some of the scenes in Tron, where I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, there is no mood being set right now. Whereas you've got Star Wars, where it is constantly scored. I don't think there is any second of that movie that is silent.
Not the original one, not that I can think of.
I don't think there is for any of them.
Well, there are moments in them where, so for instance, in Phantom Menace, the pod race scene, there's sections of the pod race where there is no music. The only sounds that you hear are of the different pods and the different racers. So yeah. John Williams isn't making music in those moments. The machinery is making music in those moments.
Right. But in contrast, again, I'm using Tron as an example, and God forbid I have an opinion, but
jerk.
Like footsteps is not enough sound for me personally to captivate me, if you will. But like the pod race scene, there's enough going on where I'm visually and auditorially stimulated, where I'm like, okay, focus. But I could find myself droning off when they're walking through the labs in Tron, where it's like, all right, is
Well, what's
somebody gonna
interesting
say
about
something?
Tron is we think it's successful today, but back then when it came out, it wasn't the earth-shattering blockbuster that I mean, it was technologically advanced, but I don't think it was a huge success, in the movie theaters or anything like that. The second one, oh my goodness, yeah, absolutely, because it was a different time, different technology, different kinds of music, and so on. Um, but yeah, going back to that idea of the music, there's next to no silence in those movies, and that came from John Williams writing these characters on a piece of paper or pieces of paper. Okay, I'm going to give this to the oboes and give this to the drum and give this to the triangle and the cymbals and all of that. And the hundred, I don't know how many people are in an orchestra or a symphony, but it's definitely more than three.
Yeah.
These bunches of people are going to sit here and play their instruments to go with this set of moving pictures, and we're going to be in awe to the point of there are some pieces of Star Wars music that I can hear now in this moment. I don't need to have the movie on. I just need to hear the sounds. I know what scene that sound is from, and or I can connect to moments in my life where I heard that sound. So, for instance, when I hear Leia's theme, yes, I can think about the movies. However, where I go is sitting in an auditorium in Orlando, Florida, with my youngest stepson sitting next to me and seeing John Williams on stage with George Lucas doing a live concert.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'm not even there right now, and I have goosebumps I'm not even playing the music, just talking about that music, and I can go to there and be
Yeah.
transported to that moment. It's witchcraft. It's magic.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is because I at least look, I used to be a cinephile where I used to watch everything that came out, and I tried to be as much of a film snob as I could be, but at least recently I see a lot of that same scoring style in modern films. And if you go back to the 70s and 80s, you don't have films that are scored throughout like Star Wars was. And again, this could be just me being a shill and riding high on Star Wars and trying to give it credit for everything. But I think a lot of that is to be attributed to John Williams and George Lucas for setting that tone where hey, you can create a lot of not only ambiance, but you can trigger certain emotions with sound and with music.
Oh
So and
goodness, yeah.
it's it I look, I keep you around because you know the name of everyone behind the scenes. I believe Ben Burt is the head sound designer.
Yes, he was the
So
he was the guy who was tapping on wires and recording bears and motors.
right. So and I think the three of them is why we have some of the things that we do today in current film.
Oh
But to
goodness, and so let's talk about George and music. And so when George did American Graffiti, he did something unique at the time, and that was he incorporated that music into the movie. So when you hear some of the soundtrack, it's not separate, just played in the background. It's what the characters are hearing. So it was, it had Wolfman Jack, and it was as if the sound was coming out of the radio. And for Star Wars, he wanted to go back to an earlier time of filmmaking where they had orchestras and symphonies playing live in the theater while the movie was up on the screen. So in a sense, it was kind of like a silent movie. And
mhm.
the movie would be different. If you were to watch Star Wars with just dialogue and Ben Burt's sound, the movies I don't think would be as meaningful, wouldn't be as powerful as they are. But when you combine all of those things together, and even when we look at the Disney era sound movies, they still use sound in really powerful ways, or the absence of sound. So do you remember the Holdo maneuver the first time you saw that on screen, where no music, no sound, just this vivid flash across the screen in a divided ship? And we are, I mean, I remember looking around in the theater going, did it break? Like, where's the sound? And then it came back. So even the absence of sound can be really powerful. But it's that combination of the music, the visuals, and that stuff, that wild, weird stuff that Ben Burt used to do.
Yeah, I've got two real world examples for you. So going back to the Holdo maneuver, so I got two very different experiences with that scene. The first one that I got was I got the chance to see that with just one other person in the theater, and that's that I saw it for the very first time practically alone. So seeing that and not having any of the like audience reaction to it was truly special, because it was one of those things where it's like, wow, that you could feel the power behind that. And then fast forward to 2 days later, seeing it opening night with 278 other people in the theater, and it was, the shock and awe was definitely there. But the other example that I use when I think of how the sounds and how the scoring in Star Wars affects me, similar to what you have with Leia's theme. When I hear Battle of the Heroes, I'm immediately transported back to being 5 or 6 years old in 2005, sitting in auditorium number 15 at my local movie theater in row H, watching Anakin and Obi-Wan going at it for in the one scene that I can vividly remember, and it's probably because I've seen the movie over 1,000 times, but I can specifically see myself sitting in the theater when Anakin and Obi-Wan are on the two droids, and Anakin is, just standing there dead-eyed at Obi-Wan right before the "I have failed you, Anakin," when they're kind of coming around.
Mm-hmm.
I same thing as you. I get goosebumps even thinking about it, because it just that triggered that emotion in me where it's like, wow, this is heavy. This is serious.
Yeah, we'd never seen that before, to see two heroes fighting.
Yeah, you never saw two blue lightsabers clash. So, yeah, and it's very sad that John Williams is officially retired for composing. I think he retired in general now, right?
See, I'm not sure about that. It's possible. And I guess one of the benefits, though, is we now have decades worth of his stuff. I mean, this may not surprise you, but I have all of those soundtracks saved to my iPod, and I listen to them like when I'm not listening to a podcast during my hour commute back and forth to work. I'm listening to John Williams music.
Wow, what a shock! You got me there.
And not only do I have John Williams music, but I have a couple of the CDs that not just had the theatrical score, but they had the ones that were what's it called? Like the original music. So, for instance, Lapti Nek from Return of the Jedi, they had modified and took that song out of the movie, and I have a version of the soundtrack with Lapti Nek on it, or Nyub Nyub from Return of the Jedi with the Ewok song.
Mm-hmm.
So every once in a while, those songs will come through when I'm shuffling through the music.
Yeah,
and I'll have John Williams music playing quite often, and now I've gone past just the Star Wars stuff, you had mentioned that scene in The Rise of Skywalker where John Williams played a cameo. After all these years, John Williams was actually in a Star Wars movie. And one of the cool behind the scenes pieces to that scene is he was surrounded by props that were connected to the movies that he won a Grammy for. So there was a prop related to Harry Potter. There was a prop related to Jaws. There was a prop related to, I think he did, was it Close Encounters of the Third Kind that John Williams did? So
I'd be shocked if he didn't.
Yeah, he's done a lot of music, and so they had these little props around him to Indiana Jones and stuff like that. So I've broadened my music to go beyond just the Star Wars soundtrack to do more John Williams music.
Right, and can't forget Jurassic Park.
Oh, yes, I cannot forget that. I should not forget that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Again, another franchise that I appreciate, but not necessarily my go-to. But the score in Jurassic Park is chef's kiss.
Yeah, and once again, like I will never. You could explain to me how it happens. I will never be able to fully appreciate how you can squiggle on paper, give those squiggles to a musician, and have them then play what they play. I don't get it. I just know that I enjoy what I hear when it comes out of instruments that John Williams has guided.
Yeah, truly the one of the greatest contributors to Star Wars. So, wow, really just film in general.
I feel bad for deaf people that don't get to witness the movies with that aspect of them.
Right.
Because like you said earlier, it connects to you on an emotional level that's different. And I don't know if it's because our physical bodies, respond to sound. Like it's actually inside of us when a sound enters our body and makes our eardrums vibrate. That thing that event occurs inside of us and not just outside of us. I don't know, but I do feel sorry that deaf folks don't get to witness the whole thing. They just get to hear us or see us talking about it.
Right. I just thought of this. The even if you go so far as trailer music, like the trailer for the official trailer for the Rise of Skywalker, I always think of it as the second half. But when you have that nice swell of the powerful Force theme, and I will go back and I will listen to that small, I think it's like 22-second snippet on repeat, just because it gets, it gives me goosebumps. It makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, because it's just got that emotional punch to it, where it's, hey, you've heard this before, but you haven't heard it like this.
What do you think of the Andor trailer related to the music?
It's that it sets a whole different tone that I thought it would have, because it's more dark and gritty. It reminds me of the Sarlacc pit theme. Okay. Right after the Jabba, this is your last chance. Free us or die. And you put him in. And then you have that, I don't know if it's a tuba. Again, I'm musically, I not inclined.
Where it cycles through the different characters with burr, and then you see a character and burr, and you see another character.
Yeah, the beginning of that trailer kind of gave me those same vibes, where it was, all right, something is about to go down. So,
and I think we should, gird our loins for that particular series, because I think that one is going to truly set folks, on different sides of the aisle related to Star Wars, because they've already been talking about how you're going to see these characters in different ways. You're going to see a different side of the rebellion. You're going to see things in ways that you haven't seen before. And that was one of the arguments that people had with the sequel trilogy. Oh, it subverted too many expectations. Well, this is gearing up to do the same thing.
Yeah, I'm very excited, and this is the most Star Wars we will have gotten for a specific story ever. Because if you think about it, we're getting 12 episodes this year, probably 12 episodes next year, and then if I remember correctly, you said there's going to be 3 total seasons.
I thought so, yeah.
So we're because I heard 24 episodes, but I could be wrong. So 24 to 36 episodes of one story, compared to that of like The Mandalorian, where there are 8 episode seasons. I mean, the massive influx of content that we are going to get one character is going to be amazing. I don't care what they put on screen. I'm about quantity over quality at this point.
Well, we're definitely getting, massive quantities, that's for sure. And I know it's titled Andor. I do have this inkling that it'll be like the Kenobi show or the Book of Boba Fett, where they will bring in so much more. I mean, we've already seen, Mon Mothma in that original Andor trailer, so I imagine that there's going to be a big component of that that political side of things. She's still a senator, and on the down low, she's working with the rebellion and helping get that up and running. So she's kind of playing this two-sided or two-faced character. So I think it's going to be deeper and much more different than what folks are used to. And one of the other things I think is really interesting about it, it's not about the magicians. It's not specifically about the Jedi or the Sith. It's about the normal folks, the non-Force users, the folks who exist across the galaxy, the aliens and humans that exist across the galaxy, and how they're led to behave one way or another.
Yeah, and I mean, back to Mon Mothma real quick. I mean, you want to talk about a character who never thought I needed to learn more about, but I am from the small snippets we've seen in the trailer, I am so excited to see more of her character.
Yeah, and going from where she came from in the original trilogy, and brief moments, brief snippets in a very plain costume, to now where she's going to be once again, she's going to play the role of a senator, so she's going to have fancy clothes on. She's going to be on Coruscant, and in these political speeders and stuff like that, versus being in these more basic clothes that she's in, and as the leader of the rebellion or whatever. So or even the Andor, when you see him as a youngster, or at least what I'm assuming is him as a youngster. Very basic tribal kind of clothing, and then growing up to be the rebel spy leader that he becomes.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because like you said, you're going to see Mon Mothma in I think possibly Bail Organa in these extravagant clothing to where they're playing the part of the senator, contrasted to the people that they actually connect with. Where you've got these gritty, these dirty rebels that are they're in the trenches, they're fighting for freedom. To where you've got that contrast of like Mon Mothma in the pristine white cloak, but she's actually working with the people who are down in the mud, who are actually who are doing the dirty work, so to speak.
And who are being affected by the people in those fancy clothes. I mean, so if you were to bring it into the real world, the citizens on the street of, name your town, versus the congressmen and the senators who are walking around in Washington, D.C. making the decisions.
Right. Yeah. It'll be nice to finally see more of that different angle of, this is your everyman kind of show. Where I think we got a glimpse of it between Rogue One and Solo, to where we're not having stories that are focused on the space wizards and the Force, where now it's okay. This is what everyday life is like out in the galaxy. This is the majority of the population.
Yeah, and how do they make it through considering the decisions and actions of others that then trickle down and affect them? We started seeing some of that stuff in the Clone Wars, and definitely started seeing even more of that in Rebels, the animated shows.
Mm-hmm.
But now to see that grittiness, that everyman, that average citizen in live action with so much focus being on them is going to be, it's a different Star Wars. And so, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think that there are some folks, I'm already going to raise my hand and say, me and you and Mike, we're gonna lap it up. We're gonna love it. We're gonna be pausing to see how do we make that citizen costume or that necklace. I think Andor had this really cool, funky necklace in that trailer when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other people. Oh, this is not my Star Wars. Where's the laser fights, or where's the spaceship battle, or this. I saw a piece of concept art and it didn't show up in the show. What the heck?
Yeah, I I'm cautiously optimistic that Andor is either going to be one of two things. It's going to be the most divisive show or media that's been put out recently, or it's going to be the thing that brings everyone together, where it's oh wow, this is different, but it's different in a good way, or it's this is different in a very bad way.
Well, I
So
think it's really risky on Disney's part to do this, and I think they've been taking a lot more risks than folks really give them credit for.
oh yeah.
And
Well, there's if you think about it, there's no real risk on their part. You're not gonna get Star Wars is not going anywhere, no matter how many people complain that the Last Jedi ruined their childhood. It is
I always love that phrase.
it is, and I mean not to be so blunt, but I mean it is a cash cow. It is a global juggernaut. It's not going anywhere. Disney could pump out dog shit for the next 10 years. They're still going to make their money because people like you, me, Mike, and the Cosmonaut Variety Hour are still going to watch it. It's become too big to be a risk anymore.
I wish that were true, or I hope that that's true, because I'm not so sure I would watch dog shit. But that's for a different podcast. That's the poo poo podcast, and that probably exists. And I apologize for anyone who that shows up on your Google feed now.
That's for the midnight hour of the Inflatable Falcon.
Star Wars After Dark. But yeah, and speaking of risk, think about the other risks that they're getting ready to undertake. They've given Taika Waititi a Star Wars movie, and for Love and Thunder, Thor's last movie, man, people are jumping all over him about that movie, and I cannot for the life of me understand why.
It's I loved it. Just first off, it's my favorite movie that's come out since Endgame, and I get this is a Star Wars podcast, but it's
same family.
Yeah, pretty much. They got. I attribute this to everyone's assuming they got too much of a good thing. The most common complaint I see for that is, oh well, they took everything that worked in Ragnarok and turned it up to 11. That's the thought track that you would think you should be on. Hey, what worked in this uber popular movie that we made a couple years ago? All right, well, let's take out the stuff that people didn't like. Let's take out the dyed eyebrows and the dry lines, and let's use that in our next movie. And people don't know what they want anymore. oh well, the new Thor movie is it's gonna be a comedy, but you've got these dark scenes with Christian Bale's character and with Gore the God Butcher on screen, and people were disappointed that it wasn't a super dark and gritty movie. You brought back the guy that just made the funniest Marvel movie. Of course, it wasn't gonna be some dark,
Well, even with
horror
this
piece.
said, it wasn't a horror piece, no. But there was still lots of dark. I mean, let's explore, Natalie Portman's character. She
Yeah.
was legit killing herself every time she transformed into Thor and not even knowing it.
Oh, but they made jokes about it, and they didn't give it enough time to marinate. I swear to God, that's a real complaint that I heard.
Oh goodness! And how
I don't.
many? I know this is a Star Wars podcast, and we're going off track, which I absolutely love, by the way. How many issues were in that series with the God Butcher? It was probably several, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can anyone expect several comic books to be easily and quickly distilled into a 2-hour movie and still cover all of that stuff in a meaningful way? And Taika managed to do it.
Yeah, and did it, and he did it in such a way where he was able to take some of the stories and plot lines from the Gore stories, and then mash them together with the Mighty Thor series. So and just to loop this back to Star Wars real quick, I remember we were talking about this on the Inflatable Falcon. I had my reservations about the Taika Waititi movie because of what he did in Ragnarok, where it was, all right, it was more of a comedy than we're used to. After seeing Love and Thunder and seeing some of the writing and the directing, not only from the actors but just from some of the visuals, it has me very excited for his movie. It has definitely, it's changed my tune on what I think about what we're going to see from him in the Star Wars universe. So I think that, again, people don't know what they want. They just they want to bitch for the sake of bitching, and just be excited. Just be happy that we're not living in what was it? Was it
the dark times?
Was it Metropolis? Was the where everyone's just working in a black and white factory?
Oh, yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. I mean, we live in such a time where we have access to so much new media. Totally. I mean, you could forget about Star Wars for a minute. There is so much content out there, whether that be, billion-dollar juggernauts like Disney pumping out content, or me and Mike, where we're just, posting a TikTok here and there. There is so much content out there that people they pick apart just for the sake of it. I've got nothing better to do, so I'm gonna bitch about this 30-second video or this 2.5-hour-long movie just for funsies.
Yeah, so there's two pieces there that I want to pick up on. One is we have access to so much stuff. I mean, I can either use this machine in front of me, my phone, turn on my television, and I have access to the whole library. So I have a Disney Plus subscription. I know I sound privileged, and I apologize for that. But I have the ability to watch this stuff as much as I want, when I want, wherever I am. And we still have all of that stuff that already existed. So I've heard people complain, well, they turned the expanded universe into Legends and made it not canon. Okay, that doesn't mean you can't read it.
Yeah, it's not.
It
like
doesn't mean you can't enjoy
print.
it. I mean, I still pick up the Hoojib book and read that, and enjoy that kids book from the late 70s or early 80s. Disney doesn't control what I enjoy. I can read an old Starlog magazine or a Star Wars Insider magazine or a Marvel comic or a Dark Horse comic and still enjoy it. And then the other piece, which I think is really, really interesting as we look at, some of the generational differences, people now have the ability right in their own hands to create Star Wars or any content, and not just create it, but to then share it. I want other people to see this. I'm putting this out there for the world to enjoy, or the world to witness. And so when I was a kid, we played with toys in the living room, and I think I may have had one friend who had a video camera, and we as kids definitely weren't allowed to touch it. But now everybody carries something like that around, and can't see it, but they carry a device that gives them the ability to record videos, in moments and share them with the world. It's amazing. And it can be a video of you in your brand new 501st approved costume, or it could be of me making something. Whether it's a song about Star Wars, a Star Wars Rocky Road ice cream sundae from Rackerdan Clan in New Jersey, or whatever, and can share it with the world.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to talk about generational differences. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I had access to a really cheap video camera that I used, and I made stop motion movies, and I made my own Star Wars stories. Or my cousin at the time, cousin by marriage, I should clarify since I said at the time, but we went in the backyard and we made our own Star Wars movie. And I sat there and I edited every frame to get the lightsabers to look real. So I think everyone at some point has had that experience where like they create their own Star Wars story.
Yeah, and I think now sometimes what happens is they create the story and they assume that the next real, whether it's J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson, that they're going to create their story that they had in their head. So, this Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Well, I had this story I made of Obi-Wan, and it didn't match what Deborah Chow showed. Yeah. Or I thought Luke Skywalker was going to do A, B, and C, and in The Last Jedi, he didn't do any of those. So up yours, Rian Johnson. You suck, and I, hope you get leprosy. Like, no.
Yeah, that's the problem with headcanon anymore. It's we all have what we imagine to, okay, what's next for this character. Like, I've got my own thoughts of like what's next for Din Djarin, because he's top 3 favorite character of all time for me. And I think like, oh well, what if this happens, or what if what if he dies in the next season and the Mandalorian is now Bo-Katan's show? Am I gonna write to Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni because that didn't happen? No, I mean
you could.
That's what I thought.
You could DM him if you wanted.
Yeah, right. Just because that's what I thought was gonna happen, or that's what I believed should have happened. Okay, cool. It ain't canon. It didn't come on screen. Process that in a healthier manner. But yeah, that's when it cracks me up when I see the comments of, that's not the Luke Skywalker that I remember. So it's like, okay, cool, but that's not the Luke Skywalker you have now.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
This is what you got. This is what's canon.
Well,
sorry about it.
With that said, how about you take a little bit of time to explore what you do have? And I'm not saying necessarily to like it. We've talked before that you don't have to like all of Star Wars, but how about you explore what's there? I mean, people have bashed, Mary Sue Ray Skywalker, or name the character, and they've got, bad things to say about it. How about we look at what was put out there? So, for instance, with Poe and The Last Jedi, how dare Holdo, say those things to Poe, the hero from the last movie? What are you talking about? The guy did a dick move. His choices led to the deaths of lots of pilots. You don't think there's going to be consequences from that, from a work standpoint?
Right.
Yeah, we're going to demote you. So you've lost your privileges. Now go do your job. Go do what I tell you. I'm not going to give you any more information because you done messed up.
Right, and I mean, just to put that in a real world scenario, like I've said it many times before. I sell cars for a living. If I were to go down to the gas station, put regular unleaded fuel in a diesel truck, and the engine blows up, I'm probably going to lose my job because I bricked an $8,000 engine. That's how the real world works. Hey, you messed up big time. So these are the consequences that you must now ensue.
Yeah, and that does connect back to that original story. It connects back to that 1977 story of our choices have consequences. Our choices lead to stuff. Some of that stuff we want to happen, and some of that stuff is something that we have to deal with because of what we chose.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do we learn from that choice? And what do we learn from that next choice? Because as long as we're drawing breath, we have the opportunity to choose something different.
Right.
And it can either follow the choices that we've made up until this point, or it can be a branch off in a different direction. I used to like listening to this music. Now I heard this, and I'm going to listen to different music. Doesn't mean that first music was bad. It's just different music. It's a different choice.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, like I've got ebbs and flows of things that I enjoy or things that I do where it's like, okay, well, for XYZ months, I'm gonna focus on this specific thing. Yeah, a lot of it comes like I'm very influenced by what's new. Like when the Batman came out, there were several weeks after the movie where that was all I could think about. And, that's all I wanted to do is I wanted to figure out like, okay, could I make this costume and what would need to go into that? And 9 times out of 10, whatever I've got going on gets overridden by Star Wars. But that's
no.
How
I can't imagine something like that would happen.
That's just how it goes because Star Wars is always in the forefront. But I don't know where I was going with that, but
it's choices.
You're right.
You get to pick.
And that's the beauty of where we're at in life. Kind of going back to that same where we've got access to a lot of things right now. Like we've got Disney Plus where we can watch all the movies, or we've got YouTube where we can see some fan films, or like you've got all the soundtracks on your iPod. There's so
all the
much
different
to choose from.
The podcasts from the Unifying Fandom.
Of course. Inflatable Falcon, Wednesdays at 8. Hey, if you guys are enjoying the episode this far, be sure to check out part 2. It will be coming out this Monday, July 25th. So thank you so much for listening to part 1, and we'll be talking to you guys real soon. Take care. Thanks.